Today, we're going to dive into your mind's hidden wiring. We're talking about the psychological patterns behind some of your strangest, most misunderstood habits. The kind of behaviors that might look a little odd from the outside, but for a complex mind, they actually serve a really specific and often a really powerful purpose.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're just operating on a completely different wavelength from everyone around you? Like your mind sees the world in a way that other people just don't seem to get? Well, if that sounds familiar, you're definitely in the right place.
Here's the big idea we're exploring. What if all those little quirks, the overthinking, the need for alone time, being quiet online, what if they aren't flaws at all? What if they're actually clues pointing to your mind's deepest and most powerful capabilities?
All right, so first up, let's get into how deep thinkers actually process the world around them. It's a way of thinking that goes way beyond simple black and white and is fundamentally different from the kind of rigid thinking we run into all the time.
Okay, so check this out. It's like a tale of two minds, really. On one side, you've got cognitive complexity. That's the mind's natural tendency to analyze everything, not because it's anxious, but just out of pure curiosity. It sees all the shades of gray. But on the other side, you've got cognitive rigidity, where the world is just simple extremes. Everything is either 100% right or 100% wrong. There's just no room for maybe or, well, it depends.
And this is where things get really interesting, because that rigidity often leads to something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the perfect explanation for why some people can be so confidently incorrect. Their lack of knowledge literally blinds them to their own flaws. They genuinely don't know what they don't know.
And that just flips the script, right? Because it means that if you sometimes doubt yourself, that's not a weakness. It's actually a sign of high intelligence. There's a name for it: intellectual humility. It's the awareness that you don't have all the answers, and that's precisely what keeps you learning and growing.
And this brings us to some very specific, maybe even familiar habits. Talking to yourself, that's not weird. It's just your brain's way of organizing complex thoughts out loud. Or what about those random, intense obsessions with a new topic? That's your mind just feasting on new information. Hating shallow answers and always asking why? That's the engine of a curious mind. And walking alone, that isn't about avoiding people. It's about creating space to enter a deeper state of thought.
Okay, so that's how the mind processes information. Now, how does that actually shape your social life? This brings us to your unique social signature. And we're going to explore why deep thinkers often have a very different approach to solitude and connection.
So why is it that some of the most intelligent, thoughtful people you'll ever meet often really enjoy being alone or have a super small circle of friends? It kind of goes against the whole idea that popularity is the goal, and the psychological reasons behind it are absolutely fascinating.
Look, it's not that they dislike people. It's that they dislike shallow connections. Their brains are just wired for depth, and honestly, small talk can be mentally exhausting. They're usually very self-sufficient, getting validation from within, not from a big crowd. So they make a conscious choice to invest their limited social energy in just a few deep, meaningful bonds. It's always quality over quantity, every single time.
And you know where else this shows up? Online. You'll often notice that these same people are pretty quiet on social media. They're not posting constant updates or selfies, and there's a really powerful reason for that. It's a deliberate strategy. They value their privacy and control over their own mental space way more than they value online popularity. Their self-worth just isn't tied to likes or comments. It comes from inside. And they get the trap of social comparison, that endless toxic cycle of measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. By staying quiet, they're actively protecting their own peace.
All right, we're going to shift gears a bit and go even deeper. We're going to talk about the resilient inner world that gets built over time and explore how our past shapes our present strength, often in ways we don't even realize.
I want you to think about this for a second. Really think. Were you ever forced to grow up way too fast? Did you have to take on responsibilities as a kid that you just weren't ready for? Did you have to be the mature one long before you ever should have been?
Well, psychology actually has a term for this experience. It's called parentification. It's what happens when a child is forced to carry adult responsibilities. Managing emotions and problems that are far beyond their years. And to cope, the brain adapts by learning to push its own needs to the side.
And this quote, wow, it just captures the results so perfectly. It's not that people from this kind of background are against getting support. Not at all. It's that their experience has taught them time and time again that support is often temporary and can't really be counted on. So, they learn to depend only on themselves.
But here's the thing you absolutely have to understand. Out of these incredibly difficult experiences, a silent, powerful emotional endurance is forged. These are people who can handle disappointment without completely falling apart. And because affection might have felt unstable or conditional, their brain learns to prioritize something else entirely: consistency, effort, and loyalty.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. How deep thinkers process the world, their social signatures, even how the past can build resilience. So what do we do with all this? How do we turn this understanding into actual empowerment?
This is probably the most important takeaway of all. None of these psychological concepts are labels meant to stick you in a box. Think of them as clues. They're a language to help you read the map of your own mind and finally understand your personal story. They help explain why you are the way you are.
And that really just leaves us with one final question for you. Understanding these patterns, that's the first step. The next step, well, that's yours. Now that you can see the hidden wiring of your mind a little more clearly, how are you going to use that knowledge to navigate your world?